This TFMR podcast is brought to you by your friends at JM Bullion. Visit jmbullion.com for all your gold and silver bullion needs. Hello again from TF Metals Report, and these are your podcast highlights for the week of January 8th through January 12th, 2024. You're going to find in this podcast highlights this week really nothing more than just two charts. We looked at the dollar and COMEX gold all week long. Of course, we discuss other things at TF Metals Report. There's a lot going on. If you have not seen our macro cast for 2024, please stop by tfmetalsreport.com and check it out. It's a free post. It's linked on the homepage. I think I posted back on Tuesday, so you may have to scroll down a little bit to find it. But it's a lengthy thing. I put it out every January, and I encourage you to read it. Give you some idea at least what my thoughts are as the new year begins. As the week began, again, we knew we were going to spend a lot of time looking at the dollar index and at gold, and that was all part of the discussion on Monday, January the 8th, as the week got started. Here's gold. First of all, these are perfectly parallel lines of a trading channel. Perfectly parallel. That's interesting. Now also, look, we pulled back. Started talking about this, last week or the week before. Got above the 50-day moving average in mid-October, rallied, pulled back to the 50-day moving average by mid-November. Rallied up, pulled back to the 50-day moving average by mid-December. Rallied up, pulled back, and here we are at the 50-day again today. Briefly trading below, but obviously finding support there because we bounced off of that 2023 pretty quick this morning. So here we are again. Would the next rally, should it come later this month and into February, take us back to the top of the channel? And by then, where would we be? 2120? 2130? Hey, that'd be fine with me. As long as this channel keeps going, that's where we're headed. So we'll watch this channel very, very closely. And here we go with Tuesday the 9th. Again, lots of other charts to discuss that day. But a key driver right now is the dollar index. Is it bouncing and continuing a decline, or has it turned? We're waiting on that answer, and that was part of the discussion on Tuesday the 9th. So now here's the dollar. This is what I said. This is what I fear is foreshadowing what might be coming for us later this week. Again, 102.50 was support and then resistance in the last 30 or 40 days. But you can definitely see where 103 was support back here in August on the way up out of the July lows. So this area between 102.50 and 103 is pretty significant resistance. If it gets through there, and now that it's through its trend line, looks like it might, it's going to 104. That's a 1.5 from here. If this blasts higher, probably not tomorrow ahead of the CPI. But again, what if that CPI comes in worse than expected, like 0.2% or something like that? What if this blast through 103 goes up 75 cents on Thursday? Well, then at that point, we'll be saying, yep, 103.5, 104 for sure. Okay, that's my concern now, as of today. Things started to get pretty interesting by Wednesday the 10th. We knew that the latest CPI report was pending on Thursday, and that was going to be the seminal event of the week. And we started to suspect the banks were going to take a run at us once that report was posted. Maybe try to break that 50-day moving average and see if there's some sell stops that they can run. Anyway, on Wednesday the 10th, this was all part of the discussion. And what we looked at was both the chart of the dollar index, also the chart of COMEX gold. Here is that discussion. It's a long one, but I think you'll want to hear it. So what happens next? Well, again, this is where we're waiting to see. Look at the symmetry of this bottom on the dollar index chart. Again, it's broken out of the downtrend line. I left that off here today. After breaking down through this, you could call it 102.5. I drew the line 102.70. I don't care where you draw it. But breaking down through there, it then held 102 for about 6 days before plunging to 101. Got back above 102, and we have now held 102 as support again for 6 days. This just tells me the dollar's going to surge tomorrow. I have no idea what the CPI is going to be. And maybe the CPI will come in right in those expectations, all those banks, and the dollar still surges. Up through this line, up through 103, goes up 50 or 60 cents on the day, and they beat the living daylights out of gold. Yeah, maybe, like I said, I don't know. It would come in 0.1. And, we'll look at this and go, yep, just another flag. You could kind of see the same thing back here in November and early December. Came down to 103.50, went up to 104, went down to 102.50, went back up to 104, and then plunged. Maybe that's what's going to happen again. Maybe get some huge sell-off in the dollar tomorrow, and all of the energy spent concocting this podcast will have been nothing but a warning that didn't come true. But man, I look at this chart, I'd say it's at least a 75% chance that the dollar's going to surge tomorrow. And I think the banks know that, and that's why they've gone to all that trouble today to paint the chart. And here it is. Again, we've talked about this over and over and over. Excuse me. And here we are, right at the bottom of the channel, right at the 50-day. And no banker, bullion bank monkey worth his or her salt would not be salivating at the prospect of busting this. And then what happens? Well, tomorrow you could plunge all the way down to 2,000. Down 30? Yeah. Close 1998, something like that, near those lows from back when the Fed met. Hell, silver's all the way back down there. The dollar's all the way back up. So why wouldn't gold plunge all the way down here? Can you not see this coming? That's what they want to do. Now, on the bright side, if we turn around and rally, get back up to 2050 and finish the week 2060, then you know what? Another successful test of the 50-day, and up we go. So tomorrow is critical, and that's why the banks have set it up the way they have. Ultimately, should the bottom drop out tomorrow, we're not just going to bottom here just below 2,000. Eventually, we're going to come all the way down here between 1980 and 1960. That's my concern. And as expected, the banks did come for us on Thursday after the CPI. Price rallied Wednesday night, and so price wasn't pinned right at that 50-day. It was actually up around 2042 when the CPI hit. That meant they had to get $15 out before they even could attack the 50-day. That's exactly what they did a couple of hours after the news in a blatant attempt to try to get price below the 50-day. And again, run some sell stops and see what kind of damage could be done. That happened. Gold got all the way down to 2018. Looks like they were going to have some success. But then we started getting some interesting news late in the day on Thursday that turned price higher and set the stage for what would become a nice rally on Friday. But here's some of the podcasts from Thursday the 11th. I think you'll find it interesting. Rate cut expectations have increased over the last 2 days, while gold fell $5 yesterday, and at its peak today, another $10 or $12. Okay? They did what they had to do. They went for it. We knew it was coming. Like I said yesterday, God, I've only been doing this for 13 years. Yeah, I can see when it's coming. Sure as hell, here they came. When the price was too high at the CPI, they waited, they got it down, and then they dropped the hammer with the naked shorts to run the stops below the 50-day just to see what would happen. But now they've done it. Okay? So there's a chance, again, with a shot of reality today, we can turn back higher, at least tomorrow. Okay, so here's your one-day chart of COMEX gold. These are all 5-minute candles, but you get the idea. See the green one right before the crazy one at 7:30 cents? 7:30. That's when the CPI came out. See the green one? Remember 10 minutes earlier than 7:30 is 7:20. What happens at 7:20? Oh, that's the COMEX open. 8:20 Eastern, 7:20 Central. So going into the CPI, price was 20.43. It dipped all the way down to 20.29. Okay, and then recovered and then slid. Got through the 9 o'clock a.m. Central is the London PM fix, got into 10, and we're just going sideways. And then in within 5 minutes, I think it was 3 minutes, you plunged. This is the deliberate effect. This is a deliberate attempt to make it happen. Plunge it down through the 50-day all the way to the lows of the day at 2017. You get a bounce, and then they smash it, and it just goes sideways. I circled 1 o'clock, though, because what happened at 1 o'clock Central? That dose of reality shook everybody. Holy shit. $508 billion in 3 months. And notice what gold has done since. Like I said, I have a last 2032 actually up on the day. And on Friday, January the 12th, we wrap up the week with a very nice bounce in the COMEX precious metals. And in fact, after 4 days of weakness, all of that was recovered on Friday. Gold's going to finish the week up $1. Silver's going to finish up $0.01. Hey, not too shabby considering where we were, and where we were involved a washout that we were waiting for all week. We figured the banks would pin gold against its 50-day moving average going into the CPI and then try to run the stops below that 50-day. I've seen it a million times. We saw it again on Thursday, and price did dip all the way down to 2018. However, here on Friday, we've gotten a bit of a trifecta, if you will, of good news, surging gold each time. First, unbelievably terrible U.S. federal budget deficit news. The first quarter alone, already $508 billion in the red for the U.S. federal government. That surged gold about $15. The U.S. and U.K. and other countries took action against Yemen overnight, threatening a wider regional war in the Middle East. That surged gold about $15. And then today's producer price index came in cooler than expected, allowing rate cut expectations increase, and that surged gold about $15. And at one point, gold was up $45, $46. And then, of course, after the PM fix and ahead of a long 3-day U.S. market holiday weekend, the algos took over and trimmed about $15 off of price. But nonetheless, like I said, gold is going to finish the week up slightly. And that's certainly better than where we were and certainly better than last week. Now, next week's going to be busy once we get through this 3-day market holiday weekend. And we'll see where we go from here. And as you see on this final chart, after bursting above the 50-day moving average back in October, price fell back in the middle of October and tested the 50-day support before rallying nearly $100. Fell back in the middle of November, tested the 50-day support, rallied $130. Fell back in the middle of December and tested the 50-day support and then rallied $110. Could we look at the action this week as another successful test of the 50-day support? Could be on the verge of another $100 rally. Well, maybe. Maybe. We'll get some of those answers next week, that's for sure. So please check back next week for another edition of your TF Metals Report podcast highlights. And in between, why not join us? It's only $15 a month. That's 50, a whopping 2/4 of US dollars a day. Money well spent to be a part of the TFMR community. Check us out at tfmetalsreport.com. Have a great weekend.